Hello, McIver Church community. Thank you for joining us for our online service today. Even while we are apart, in a sense, we are still joined as we sing, as we pray, as we learn, as we give ourselves together in this community. This morning, we continue to stand in the light and the life of resurrection. And so right now, for our call to worship, I'm going to invite you, wherever you are located in this moment, to stand. Let's do that together right now where we are. We're going to stand up in this light and life of resurrection. Today we are looking at this account of two disciples on the Emmaus Road and the way that they encountered Jesus in new and surprising ways. We know that this life of following Jesus is a journey. But this is always how it has been for God's people. The Jewish people would participate in annual pilgrimage, journeying up to the holy city of Jerusalem. And as they walked, they would sing songs. These songs are recorded in our Bibles as the Psalms of Ascent. In the book of Psalms, they are numbers 120 to 134. And so for our call to worship today, let's hear one of these songs from the journey, Psalm 126. It goes like this. When the Lord brought back his exiles to Jerusalem, it was like a dream. We were filled with laughter and we sang for joy. And the other nations said, "What amazing things the Lord has done for them." Yes, the Lord has done amazing things for us. What joy. Restore our fortunes, Lord. As streams renew the desert, those who plant in tears will harvest with shouts of joy. They weep as they go to plant their seed, but they sing as they return with the harvest. So let's take a moment now and allow this song to shape our prayers together. Jesus, we speak this song to you. We speak from our hearts before you this morning. We confess that these days feel like a dream. They feel unreal, and it's hard to make sense of them. It's hard to find rhythm within them. But God, would you come to us? Would your presence refresh us and remind us? Help us to look backwards and see the ways you have blessed and you have worked for good in our lives and in the world. And would this help us again to look forward and dream together of what is to come, to dream towards your purposes and towards your future, Lord. But here today, as there is deep pain and hurt, question and longing, God, would we cling to this promise that our tears are like seeds for the harvest? And so we open up our lives before you, Lord. We invite you to come and know every part of us, that you are present in all of our fears, all of our emotions, all of our doubts and questions. And God, would you use these prayers as seeds for the harvest, preparing us for what is to come, preparing us for the world that is to come. This new world in you. This morning, Lord, as we worship together, continue to shape our hearts and prepare us for your kingdom. We pray this in your name, Jesus. Amen. So we want to continue to do that here this morning. We have a couple songs that will appear in the playlist, submissions from members of our congregation, songs that are designed for us to be able to worship together. And so let's take some time now to sing along with these and enter into these songs to bring our worship to God.
If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, I will hear from heaven and I will forgive their sin and I will heal their land. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, I will hear from heaven and I will forgive their sin and I will heal their land. 2 Chronicles 7:14.
Great the chasm that lay between us, how high the mountain I could not climb. In desperation I turned to heaven and spoke your name into the night. Then through the darkness, your loving kindness tore through the shadows of my soul. The work is finished, the end is written. Jesus Christ, my living hope. Who could imagine so great a mercy Jesus calls me his own. Beautiful Savior, I'm yours forever. Jesus Christ, my living hope. Hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Then came the morning that sealed the promise. Your buried body began to breathe. Out of the silence, the roaring lion declared the grave has no claim on me. Then came the morning that sealed the promise. Your buried body began to breathe. Out of the silence, the roaring lion declared the grave has no claim on me. Then came the morning that sealed the promise. Your buried body began to breathe. Out of the silence, the roaring lion declared the grave has no claim on me. Jesus, yours is the victory. Hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Jesus Christ, my living hope. Oh God, you are my living hope.
So thank you for singing along with us here today, and thank you to those who submitted these worship song videos. We want you to know that we're open to receiving more of these, and if anyone would like to send one of those in, you can contact our worship pastor, Stefan, and we'd be happy to have many members of our church helping to guide our worship in this season. A few announcements that we wanted to share with you this morning. We want to journey with you, and we recognize that God is still at work in powerful ways in each one of our lives. And even while we're apart, this is continuing on. And so we've created a form on our website called Faith Steps. And we want to encourage you to go check that out. This is a place where you can communicate with our church through the pastors and let us know about the different questions, the different steps that you are wanting to take to grow in relationship with Jesus. We are all about that as a church. We want to help people to grow in faith in a lifelong journey of knowing and following Jesus. And so you may want to go on that page and indicate that you're interested in one typical faith step that we celebrate here as a church. So maybe that's learning how to become a follower of Jesus. Maybe that's baptism. Maybe that's membership or child dedication. These are some of the faith steps that we celebrate as a church. We would encourage you to check that out. This would have been what we call Celebration Sunday on the calendar for our church. Of course, there's much that's been disrupted and reoriented in this season, but we want to hold this as a place marker, a Sunday where we celebrate all of these faith steps that are happening in the life of our community. And so again, as we think about that this morning and hear more about it later in the sermon, let's continue to lift this up and celebrate how God is changing lives here in our church community. Another thing we're celebrating this morning is having arrived at a goal, a project we've been in for a number of months now. We have achieved the amount we needed to complete our roof repair project. And so this is something we want to celebrate together. Maybe at home where you are right now, you just want to raise the roof yourself, but we want to continue to celebrate as a church that we're able to accomplish this even in a difficult season, and we'll no longer have a gaping hole in our roof with water coming into the church, and that will be very nice. Throughout this week, you may also want to find ways to engage in community. The best form of that for us in this season, we feel, is what we call Zoom groups. And so we have a series of these meeting throughout the week, some designed for different demographics. You can find these all on our website, and we would encourage you just to drop in on one of these. It's a great opportunity for us to share and pray and care for one another. Next week, we will begin a new series going through the book of James. We're calling it Wisdom from Above for Life on the Ground. I think wisdom is something that we all need in this season. And the book of James assures us that if we need wisdom, we should ask God, and he will generously give it to us. So we want to encourage you to join us for this series and invite others who might be interested as well. You can find the outline for this series in the links below in the description of this video. As well, next week in our service, we will celebrate communion. You can come ready for this by preparing your elements of bread and juice at home and finding our communion litany that we'll be able to speak together and help prepare our hearts to partake in this meal. Again, this can be found in the links below this video. And so now we want to take some time just to steady our lives, to bring our prayers before God. We're going to move into this time of prayer, but before we do, let's reflect on something. In this challenging season, we have developed all kinds of new concerns of speaking moistly, of wearing masks to protect ourselves and our neighbors. Of course, we should be concerned about such things, but it can be alarming to realize that we have become suspicious of even the air that we breathe, the very thing that gives us life. All of this has resulted in many of us experiencing unprecedented anxiety. Well, we don't want you to stay stuck there. We want to help you, we want to equip you, and call out that God is present in your life, even in the difficulty of these emotions right now. God wants to meet you even in the midst of this storm and breathe new life into you. So today we're going to use a form of prayer that you can continue to practice on your own. It's called breath prayer. Breath prayer is an ancient Christian practice that invites our whole bodies, not just our minds and our mouths, to participate in prayer. And we do this by interacting with God. As we participate in breath prayer, we are interacting with God's Spirit that is closer to us, more present than the air that we breathe. As you breathe, we encourage you to repeat a simple sentence that invites God in your life. You may also use language that signals releasing or exhaling anything in your life that is not of God. And so breath prayer is very simple, but it's designed for us to repeat over and over and to be integrated into every part of our lives. There's no end of the different language that one might use in this style of prayer, so we encourage you to experiment and tailor a breath prayer that's going to work for you. Some meaningful words that you can repeat over and over again and interact with God's Spirit. But today, I've created some simple breath prayers inspired by our passage, this journey on the Emmaus Road. So let's try this together now. We're going to take time to practice breath prayer. So let's become still. Let's become aware of our breathing. Don't hurry. Just create a rhythm of peaceful breathing. In and out. Continue that rhythm together. Now let these words move through you. Risen Jesus, open our eyes to see you where we had missed. Risen Jesus, open our hearts to feel you right in our midst. Risen Jesus, open our mouths to proclaim you without fear. Risen Jesus, open our hands to offer you back our lives. Let's try that one more time. Risen Jesus, open our eyes to see you where we had missed. Risen Jesus, open our hearts to feel you right in our midst. Risen Jesus, open our mouths to proclaim you without fear. Risen Jesus, open our hands to offer you back our lives. Jesus, thank you for your love that fills our lives. We want to continue to offer our lives back to you. Come and meet us in every moment. We pray in your name. Amen.
Good morning. Our scripture reading this morning is taken from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 24, verses 13 to 34. I'm using the New Living Translation. That same day, 2 of Jesus' followers were walking to the village of Emmaus, 7 miles from Jerusalem. As they walked along, they were talking about everything that had happened. And as they talked and discussed these things, Jesus himself suddenly came and began walking with them. But God kept them from recognizing him. He asked them, "What are you discussing so intently as you walk along?" They stopped short, sadness written across their faces. Then one of them, Cleopas, replied, "You must be the only person in Jerusalem who hasn't heard about all the things that have happened there these last few days." "What things?" Jesus asked. "The things that happened to Jesus, the man from Nazareth," they said. "He was a prophet who did powerful miracles, and he made a mighty teacher in the eyes of God and all the people. But our leading priests and other religious leaders handed him over to be condemned to death, and they crucified him. We had hoped that he was the Messiah who had come to rescue Israel. All this happened 3 days ago." Then some women from our group of his followers went at his tomb early this morning, and they came back with an amazing report. They said his body was missing, and they had seen angels who told them Jesus is alive. Some of our men ran out to see, and sure enough, his body was gone, just as the women had said. Then Jesus said to them, "You foolish people, you find it so hard to believe all that the prophets wrote in the scriptures. Wasn't it clearly predicted that the Messiah would have to suffer all these things before entering his glory?" Then Jesus took them through the writings of Moses and all the prophets, explaining from all the scriptures the things concerning himself. By this time, they were nearing Emmaus and the end of their journey. Jesus acted as if he was going to go on, but they begged him, "Stay the night with us, since it's getting late." So he went home with them. As they sat down to eat, he took the bread and blessed it. Then he broke it and gave it to them. Suddenly their eyes were opened, and they recognized him. And at that moment, he disappeared. They said to each other, "Didn't our hearts burn within us as he talked with us on the road and explained the scriptures to us?" And within the hour, they were on their way back to Jerusalem. There they found the 11 disciples and the others who had gathered with them, who said, "The Lord has really risen." He appeared to Peter. The word of the Lord.
Good morning. Well, there are all kinds of events in our lives, all kinds of celebrations and big events that we have. Some of them are celebrations like birthdays or weddings. Some of them are holidays like Christmas and Easter. We've just had Easter. Sometimes it's maybe an accomplishment at work, a promotion, or graduation, some kind of education milestone. There are all kinds of things that we celebrate. Now, I'm not really a party planner. I can do it, but it always kind of takes a little piece out of me, and I feel really drained. And after these big events, I tend to crash a little. I think that's actually pretty common. Working in church, the two really big events that we face are Christmas and Easter. And both of them become big events, and people expect a lot. You expect a lot at home, and you expect a lot at church. And Christmas and Easter tend to take a lot out of pastors and staff and volunteers, and it's pretty common to kind of crash a little. Well, 2,000 years ago was the first Easter. Now, we use the phrase Holy Week as we are preparing and getting close to Easter, but 2,000 years ago was the first Palm Sunday. And while Passover wasn't anything new, there was the first time that Jesus washed the disciples' feet. There was the first time that Jesus led them in the Lord's Supper. There was betrayal, there was crucifixion, and finally, Jesus' lifeless body placed in a tomb. And the disciples had a lot of different emotional responses. They kind of crashed a little. That's a lot of drama, a lot of heartache, a lot of disappointment. Things did not turn out the way the disciples expected. What a letdown. On that first resurrection morning, the disciples are hiding. The women are coming to the tomb with spices to anoint the body of Jesus. They are doing what needs to be done. And then the news starts to come in. The body is gone. Jesus is gone. The stone is rolled away. Some angels said that Jesus has risen, but nobody's seen him yet. So what happened after the resurrection? Well, we have 4 Gospels, and we have 4 different stories. It's not that any one of them is wrong. It's that 4 different people told their perspective or their version of events the way they experienced it, the way they heard about it. And so we have these 4 different accounts. Now, there's some similarities, but there are also some differences. We've been in the book of Luke for the last number of weeks, and so we're going to stay in the book of Luke, and we're going to take a look at how Luke describes the events after the resurrection. There's kind of 2 parts, and Denver told us about the fish fry last week on Easter, but we're going to back up a little bit. We're going to take a look at a really unique story that is only found in the Gospel of Luke. And Henry read that to us this morning, and it is the story of the disciples on the road to Emmaus. Now, we start Easter morning, or Resurrection Sunday, by saying he is risen first thing in the morning. In fact, this year, last Sunday, before I was even out of bed, I heard my phone ping, and it was a friend who had sent a message, he is risen. I wasn't even out of bed yet, and people were already saying, he is risen. It wasn't like that on that first Easter Sunday. As I mentioned, we're looking specifically at Luke 24 and the disciples walking to Emmaus from Jerusalem. That story actually has a lot for us to take away and a lot that we can relate to in our walk of faith in the 21st century. The text tells us that two followers of Jesus set out for Emmaus, which was about a 7-mile walk from Jerusalem. Well, in no time, Jesus appears and he's walking alongside them. When they see him, they don't recognize him. In fact, the text tells us that God didn't let them recognize Jesus. Jesus asked them a simple question, hey, what are you talking about? I love the way the New Living Translation describes it. It says they stopped short with sadness written across their faces. We can relate to that, or we can imagine that. We can imagine what that looks like, stopping short with sadness written across their faces. Haven't you heard? You must be the only person in Jerusalem that doesn't know what's been going on these last 3 days. And Jesus says, what things? Well, the disciples begin to describe Jesus, and they finish by saying, we had hoped he was the Messiah who had come to rescue Israel. We had hoped he was the Messiah. Things had not turned out the way the disciples had hoped for, the way they believed they would turn out. And how many of us can relate to that? How many times haven't you, in your faith, had things turn out in a very different way than you had hoped or expected? Have you fervently prayed about something or for someone, feeling like surely this lines up with God's plan, but then it didn't happen? I think if we're honest with ourselves, most of us have had experiences in our faith where we were sad or confused or maybe even a little frustrated because of the way things did or didn't turn out. We know how the story ends for these disciples on the road to Emmaus, but we don't know how our story will end, or the stories of those we love. Now they tell Jesus about how the women reported that the body of Jesus was missing and that the angel had told the women that Jesus was alive, but they're confused and they're not sure what's happened. Some men have confirmed that the body is missing, but nobody has seen Jesus yet. And then Jesus kind of calls them out. You foolish people. You know, that always seems a little harsh to me. After all, it was God who kept them from recognizing Jesus, and now he calls them foolish people. But Jesus goes on and explains the scriptures to them, and not just about who he is, but rather who he is within the whole story of God and humanity. Well, the three of them arrive in Emmaus, and the pair convinces Jesus to stay with them. They want to hear more of what he has to say. Now, interestingly, it's very likely that this pair on the road to Emmaus is a married couple. We don't know for sure, but scholars are suggesting that it's pretty likely that in the book of John, where Cleopas is referred to with a wife named Mary, that this is very likely the same couple. And since the pair invite Jesus to stay in their home with them, scholars suggest it really is likely that it's this Cleopas and Mary. So they arrive in their home and they sit down for a meal. And it's during this meal that when Jesus breaks bread, their eyes are opened and they recognize him. And then, poof, he disappears. Why couldn't he have stayed a little longer? I always wonder, why couldn't he have stayed a little longer and just had some more conversation and answered some questions? But we don't know why God did it that way. But there's this interesting parallel that can be drawn here, if this is Cleopas and Mary. Because there was another couple whose eyes were opened when they ate something. Adam and Eve's eyes were opened when they ate fruit in the garden. But their meal was the beginning of struggle and hardship, and their eyes were opened to sin. Cleopas and Mary's eyes were open to Jesus and the new life that his death and resurrection would bring. It was the solution to the problem created by the first pair. He was the Messiah they were hoping for. Jesus was bringing in a new way, a new covenant for all nations, not just for the Israelites. Now, as followers of Jesus today, we too often feel confused or disappointed, and we don't always understand God's ways, and we don't always see Jesus even when he's actively at work in our lives. As followers of Jesus, we too often feel confused or disappointed. We don't always understand God's ways, and we don't always see Jesus at work in our lives, even though he is actively at work in our lives. There's a story told of a man who's living in a town where there's a severe weather watch. He is a devout man, and he prays that God would save him and protect him. Well, a little while later, a neighbor comes by and says, we've been advised to leave our homes and seek a safer place. And he says, no, God's going to save me. Well, the weather turns bad, and there's a flood coming. And the water starts rising, and the fire department comes by and says to the man, you need to evacuate your home. Come with us. We've come to take you to safety. And he says, it's okay. God's going to save me. Well, the waters continue to rise, and he needs to climb to his roof, the roof of his house, to stay safe. Along comes someone in a boat and says, please get off your roof and get in the boat. We want to take you to safety. And he says, it's okay, God's got this. He's going to save me. Well, the waters continue to rise, and the man drowns. He gets to heaven, and he says to God, why didn't you save me? I thought you were going to save me. And God says, I sent a neighbor, the fire department, and a boat. What more did you want? Now, of course, that's just a silly story, but there is a point to it, and that is that we so often don't see God at work in our lives in ordinary ways. We expect these big, grand experiences, and quite often God is actively working in our lives through our neighbors and through people that come along, and they are there to help us, and God is at work through them. Jesus invites us into a relationship with him. That doesn't mean that we'll never feel afraid, be confused, or even disappointed. That's okay. We are allowed to get real with Jesus. In one of the Gospels, we read about Thomas, one of the original 12 disciples who experienced doubt. I like that. I like that we know about Thomas and that the Gospels don't try and hide it. And even Jesus, he doesn't reprimand Thomas for doubting. And I don't judge Thomas, because I think I probably would have been like Thomas. I probably would have said too, you know what? I want to see those scarred hands for myself before I believe that someone actually rose from the dead. We are invited into an active relationship with Jesus. I once heard a preacher say that studying the Bible is like reading the menu at a restaurant, but not ordering anything. Studying the Bible, we need to study the Bible, but then we need to put it into practice, and that was his point, is that just studying it and never doing anything with it would be like going to a restaurant and just reading the menu, but not ordering. We follow Jesus, and that's an action word. Bob Goff is a writer who, when he was a new Christian, decided that he needed to go to Bible studies because he needed to learn about what the Bible said. But then he found that this group he was part of just kept reading the Bible and studying the Bible, and they never put it into practice. So he said, we need to be Bible study and Bible doing. And so they would study the Bible, and then the next week they would put it into practice, and then they would get together again the next week, and they would share their experiences about how they had put into practice the things they had studied the week before. I like that. Studying the Bible is so important, and understanding what is in there, but we also need to put it into practice. We are followers of Jesus, and we need to be active. Well, prior to the resurrection, the disciples were being discipled by Jesus. They were learning. They were students. And after the resurrection, they were told by Jesus to go and make more disciples. In Matthew's gospel, we read, "Therefore, go and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Teach these new disciples to obey all the commands I have given you, and be sure of this, I am with you always, even to the end of the age." The disciples have been given the task of doing God's work. Jesus taught them, and then he said, "Okay, now you're it. Make disciples. Teach these new disciples." And that's what's been happening for 2,000 years. We are now disciples, and we are supposed to make more disciples. The journey of faith does not look the same for all believers. Some of you have been followers of Jesus for a very long time. Some of you might even say, my whole life, because you've never known anything different. Some of you are newer to faith and are still trying to figure this out. What does it mean to be a follower of Jesus? Maybe some of you wandered away from faith, grew up with faith, but wandered away, and you're making your way back, and you're not quite sure how this is going to work out in your life. And maybe some of you who are watching are just wondering about faith. You haven't been ready to make that commitment to follow Jesus. Well, we encourage you to just keep asking questions and keep learning. It doesn't matter where you are on your faith journey. There is no finish line on earth. As long as we are on earth and we are following Jesus, we keep growing, we keep learning, we keep serving. But how we do these things is going to change with times, with experience, and also as we age and as we grow spiritually. But we're never finished. We're never finished with our faith as long as we are alive on earth. So, what might your next step be? Do you need to study the Bible more? Or do you need to be a Bible doer a little more, following the teachings? Do you need to work on your prayer life? Do you need to share more of your resources? Or maybe you haven't been baptized and it's time for that next step. Maybe it's time for you to say yes to Jesus. Wherever you're at, we want to walk with you. No judgment. Just walk alongside you and take those next steps with you. In our church, we have 3 pastors, and we are different. We have different roles, we have different gifts, we are different ages, different genders. What we have in common is our love for Jesus and our desire to walk with people on their faith journey. If you are feeling anxious about life or about this COVID crisis or anything else, we will gladly talk with you, pray with you, listen to you. If you want to take a next step like baptism or be part of a small group, a Zoom group, we can help you with that as well. All our contact information is on our website, and we encourage you to reach out. The Christian life is a journey. It is an active, follow Jesus, do stuff for him kind of journey. It's not easy, and it doesn't have all the answers. And sometimes we don't see Jesus even when he's right in front of us. But he promises to be with us always. Before Jesus was born, the angel said that he would be named Emmanuel, which means God is with us. Just before he ascended to heaven, Jesus said to the disciples, "Be sure of this, I am with you always." How was he going to be with them always when he was leaving? Well, he told them to wait in Jerusalem because a gift was coming. Maybe this time, since Jesus had predicted his death, predicted his resurrection, and they both happened, maybe this time they believed him and they waited around for that gift. The gift would be the Holy Spirit, who empowered the first disciples and continues to empower us to do the work that we are called to do. I think that most of us can identify with the disciples on the road to Emmaus. Maybe not every day, but at different times on our journeys with Jesus. we too are confused or disappointed or miss seeing Jesus, even when he's right there with us. Having times of confusion, grief, disappointment, fear, that's okay. It's normal. But what we need to do is take those feelings to Jesus and trust that he is with us always. Right now we're in this strange season of life, and I don't know about all of you, but I have had some frustrations and some tough days. In fact, this past Wednesday was one of those tough days for me. Wednesday was the day when I kind of hit this wall with the isolation. It was in the afternoon, and I just suddenly felt just trapped. I got out my phone, and I found this GIF, GIF, one of those silly little clips that's supposed to make you laugh. I found one of a cat in a cage, not a tiger, a cat, a house cat in a cage. And he had his paw through the bars, and he was pawing at the latch, trying to get out of the cage. And I sent it to my sisters. I have 2 sisters, and we have a group chat. And I just simply said, "This is how I feel today." And in moments, one of them messaged back, "You and me both." I was just feeling trapped and caged in. Has anyone else had a day like that in this last week or in the last weeks? Well, just a few moments after my cage rant with my sisters, my sister-in-law on the other side, she posted this little poem, and it's regarding COVID-19. It's called "We Are All in the Same Boat, but we are not all in the same storm." It's just short, and I want to read that to you because I found it to be really encouraging and just kind of set me back in the right frame of mind. For some people, it's a sprinkling. This is a break. It's a breather. It's a pause in the normal. It's a time to reconnect with family and slow down, and honestly, it's kind of peaceful. For some, it's a storm. It's a bit scary. It's disruptive. It's enough to make you stay up and watch the news and worry. For some, it's a hurricane. It's tearing at the boards and pulling off the roof. It's washing them out to sea. It's dark and unknown. It's life-changing. It's not wrong to be enjoying the sprinkles or enduring the storm, but please don't negate the difference. Rest with family, but don't minimize the hurricane engulfing your neighbor. Laugh at a meme, but get on your knees for your friends. Get in someone else's storm. It helps put things back into perspective. We have frustrations, but there are people who have it much worse than I do. And so I just needed to kind of dial back my frustration and remember to pray for those who had a worse situation than me. People are looking for answers as to why this COVID virus is around. I don't need answers. There is trouble in the world. That is nothing new. And yes, I'm going to have my moments where I'm frustrated, but I can take those moments to Jesus and then trust that Jesus will never leave me, that he is always with me. And maybe you're wondering, well, how do I do that? How do I take my frustrations to Jesus? I would say find a quiet place where you have some privacy. Maybe you even want to take a cup of coffee or a can of Pepsi or whatever you like to drink and sit down and just have a conversation with Jesus. Imagine you're talking to a friend and just pour out your heart and ask Jesus to just fill you with his peace. And remember that Jesus often works through other Christians. And so maybe a friend is going to come and encourage you or call you or send you a note, and recognize that Jesus is at work. Maybe you aren't feeling any of these frustrations or discouragements, but maybe Jesus wants you to be that friend, to pick up the phone and call someone or encourage them with a card or a note. As long as we have breath, we can be used by God and continue to grow in our relationship with God. There is no badge or award for completing the Christian life on earth. Our faith does evolve and change and grow as we live it out. Not just study about it, but live it out in practical ways. I want to share this quote. It comes from someone on the speaking team of Ravi Zacharias International Ministries in India. He says, as we mature and experience life more, our mind also needs to be opened and enlarged to gain a deeper, bigger, and richer understanding of God and his ways. This, in turn, enables us to pick up the broken and fallen pieces of our lives and reframe them in the image and pattern of the crucified and risen one. As we actively live out our faith, it expands, it grows, it becomes deeper and richer. What is next for you in your journey with or towards Jesus? Don't walk alone. The Christian life is not meant to be walked alone. In this time of difficulty and strange goings-ons, may you sense God's nearness, his comfort and hope in these difficult days, and may you see Jesus at work in your life.
Hey kids! Stefan here. I hope you are having a great weekend on this week after Easter. Today, we're going to learn a little more about the Bible. The Bible is one of God's favorite ways to talk to you and to talk to me, to talk to everyone. So today we have a story that takes place right after Easter, just like we're in the week that's right after Easter. On the same day, 2 disciples were going to a village. They were talking and walking with each other and talking about everything that had happened. As they talked with each other, Jesus himself showed up and started walking along with them. But the disciples didn't recognize him. Jesus asked them, "What are you talking about?" The disciples stood still. They looked sad. One of them said, "Are you only a visitor to Jerusalem and you don't know what's happened these last few days?" "What's happened these last few days?" Jesus asked. "About Jesus of Nazareth," they replied. "He was a prophet. He was powerful in word and deed. The chief priests and our rulers handed him over to be sentenced to death, and they crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel. And what's more, it's the 3rd day since all this took place. Some of our women amazed us too. They went to the tomb early this morning, but they didn't find his body. They came and told us that they had seen a vision of angels, and the angels said that Jesus was alive. Then some of our companions went to the tomb too, and they found it just like the women had said, and they didn't see Jesus' body." Jesus said to them, "Are you guys foolish? Don't you believe what the prophets have said?" And so, beginning with Moses and all the prophets, Jesus explained to them what was said in all the scriptures concerning himself. I don't know about you guys. This book, the Bible, isn't always super easy to understand. I don't know if you read it every night or if your parents read to you sometimes. Sometimes the sentences are long and the words are confusing and the stories aren't always as clear as we're used to them being. But you know what? In this story, Jesus himself shows up and helps the disciples understand the Bible. You'd think that the disciples would have been the kinds of guys who would have gotten the things about Jesus. They would be the really smart ones or the ones who are really good at understanding. But I'm going to tell you a secret. The disciples are just like us. We're just like the disciples. That means that we're really close to Jesus, but it also means that we need help sometimes. And sometimes even your parents need help understanding this book and the things that are said in that. But the good news is that after Easter, Jesus and the Holy Spirit, they help us understand what all this is about. And people are still learning things from this book all the time because God is always helping us understand it. So I hope that in this week and in the weeks to come, you can sit down and read this with your parents. Maybe your parents will pick some stories out for you. And if you have questions about it, just ask your parents. Maybe they'll know. And if the parents don't know, they can pray about it. Maybe God will help them understand. Maybe you guys know something your parents don't know about this too. There's a lot of wisdom to go around, and God wants to help each of us understand what God is saying to us through this book. I hope you all have a great week. We'll see you Wednesday. Bye now.
Thank you for joining us for our service today. As we've gathered together, it's our hope that you've met with God during this time. We want you to know that we are praying for you, that in the midst of this week, wherever you find yourself, that you would experience this resurrection power that raised Jesus from the dead present in your own life. At work, bringing hope, bringing transformation, bringing about new life. It's right there in your life. When Paul preached to the church in Corinth, he told them about this resurrection that had come through Jesus. And he concluded, always work enthusiastically for the Lord, for you know that nothing you do for the Lord is ever useless. So, brothers and sisters, in this week, let's give ourselves to that, to serving and loving and living for the Lord with enthusiasm, because nothing we ever do is useless. Let's continue to look forward in hope that we have in Jesus.